I was once saved from the dead by Shiji. Before I was recognized and returned to the palace. He taught me to read and write and practice martial arts, treating me with utmost kindness, until I killed the woman he had loved for years. To avenge her, Shiji became my prince consort. He spent years plotting to turn everyone against me, torturing me in every way before finally throwing me back into that pile of corpses. Shiji said that the greatest regret of his life was saving me back then. So, upon being reborn, I quickly crawled out of the pile of corpses on my own. Later, I heard that it had rained heavily that day. The once arrogant Shinzaiahui, disregarding the filth and mud, knelt half-bent in the pile of corpses, digging until his hands were covered in blood. All to find a little beggar. Shiji still killed me. On the anniversary of Su Yuan's death, he used the dagger stained with Su Yuan's blood to stab me repeatedly. He then twisted it viciously, his eyes red with hatred. Why did you kill Su Yuan? Shiji had asked this question many times. I had answered. I said I didn't. But Shiji didn't believe me. After all, everyone knew that the princess, who had been found in the countryside, was deeply in love with the young marquis. Unable to force the young marquis to marry her, she killed the woman he loved out of hatred. Now, Shiji was asking this question merely to find an excuse to tighten his grip on the dagger. His hands trembled violently, so much so that even I could feel it. Yet this man, who had previously severed my limbs and tortured me in every way, had never shown a hint of mercy. So I smiled at Shiji again. Shiji, what are you afraid of? Now that he is the grand tutor of the new dynasty, killing an unloved princess of the former dynasty is a trivial matter. And all of this is merely preparation for him to avenge Su Yan. Shiji clenched his lips tightly and suddenly let go of my hand. He let me fall into the pile of corpses and once again became expressionless. Chang, Shiji called out to me from above. The thing I regret most is saving you back then. I'm dead, but it feels like I'm not completely dead. So I saw Shiji return and set fire to my former princess's mansion. Everyone praised Shiji for his righteousness in killing his own kin, saying that the remnants of the previous dynasty deserved to die. Shiji remained calm the entire time, until he saw the empress by the new emperor's side. Weiji brother. The resurrected Su Yan called him that, just as she had done back then. With the same intimacy, Shiji stared at her, unable to tear his gaze away for a long time. I heard Su Yan explain to Shiji with a tone of apology, saying that the former emperor was depraved and tyrannical, leaving the people in dire straits. She had no choice but to frame Shiji. After all, he was a man of great talent, and the new emperor had already intended to recruit him. But the Shen family had been hereditary earls for generations. How could they so easily betray their country? So she had set the fire. This was something Ayun owed Weiji Gu. Su Yan clutched Shiji's hand tightly, her almond-shaped eyes brimming with tears, looking pitifully charming. Whatever Weiji Gu wants in the future, Ayun will compensate you. The words were spoken with a hint of ambiguity. I watched Shiji remain silent for a long time. After a moment, he replied in a hoarse voice, "All right." Su Yan immediately broke into a smile and said in a sweet voice, "Weiji brother is so kind. Weiji brother is indeed kind." I couldn't help but think. So Shiji truly loves Su Yan. He has always despised deception. I once deceived him on his birthday, just to give him a surprise. But that day, Shiji had a cold expression, so I didn't even give him the birthday gift. It turns out Shiji can compromise. Just not with me. I should be dead. But when I opened my eyes again, I was lying among the corpses. The stench of decaying corpses mixed with the smell of blood, overwhelming me for a moment. I had become the beggar girl. No. 19 again. Not the Princess Shirong I had become later. Shijio. The thing I regret most is saving you back then. Shinshiji's voice, still filled with hatred, echoed in my ears. So I took a moment to compose myself, then endured the pain throughout my body and crawled out of the pile of corpses. Now that I had escaped on my own, I owed Shinshiji nothing. I actually feared pain. But it seemed like I had been in pain all along. The northern regions were engulfed in endless warfare, and a great disaster struck, causing bandits to rise up. The old servant who had cared for me hid me in this pile of corpses before he died. But who would have thought that the bandits were so cautious, intending to burn the bodies to ashes? In my previous life, I panicked and fled, only to be discovered by the bandits. It was Shinshiji who saved me. He saved me. But in the end, he killed me. All I wanted was to live. So I gritted my teeth and carefully crawled over one corpse after another. But my luck was truly terrible. I escaped the bandits and avoided Shinshiji, only to stumble upon Jiang Xiubai, Shinshiji's archenemy and one of the most notorious troublemakers in the capital. There was even a dirty little cat hiding here. A young man in fine robes sat atop a horse, looking down on me with a smirk, playing with his horsewhip. But the moment I saw Jiang Xiubai, a familiar yet unfamiliar voice suddenly rang out. At least she's a girl. You must bury her properly and not treat her with disrespect. The young general removed his crimson cloak and covered my battered body. He built a grave for me, giving me a place to rest in peace. That was the scene after my death. Back then, for Shinshiji, I caused Jiang Xiubai no end of trouble. But in the end, it was this man who left me with the last shred of dignity. So I felt that perhaps I had been lucky after all. Because I had met Jiang Xiubai. What a tiny bit of courage I had, it was useless. Seeing me staring at him in shock, Jiang Xiubai seemed to think I was scared. So he raised his horsewhip to scare me. But there was a bag of silver at my feet. Take the money and get out of my way. The pain throughout my body made it almost impossible for me to stand. So I decided to take a gamble. The corner of his crimson cloak hung down from the horse's back, and I clutched it tightly. Jiang Xiubai instinctively lowered his whip. Save me, please. My voice was hoarse and barely audible. I had only enough strength left to say those words. But I desperately wanted to live. Before losing consciousness, I faintly heard Jiang Xiubai roar in anger. This is the 1,000 taels of silver I spent to buy. 1,000 taels of silver? Then he was duped. This fabric isn't worth that much. I couldn't help but think about it in a daze. Jiang Xiubai had picked me up after all. In his words, I had dirted the clothes he had spent 1,000 taels of silver to buy. I had to compensate him. So I became a maid who did odd jobs for him. But what was more important was that Jiang Xiubai suspected that I had a relationship with Shinshiji. I heard that it rained heavily that day. The high and mighty Shinzaihui disregarded the mud and filth, kneeling half-bent in the pile of corpses, digging until his hands were covered in blood. He even personally shot and killed those bandits. All for the sake of finding a little beggar. When Jiang Xiubai was telling me this, he couldn't help but stroke his chin and appraise me from head to toe. Then he asked directly, "Was he looking for you?" Though he asked me, his tone was certain. After all, I was the only one who survived in that pile of corpses. But I wouldn't admit it. I just smiled weakly. With the pathetic confidence of a pig that doesn't fear boiling water, I don't know. Jiang Xiubai snorted disdainfully. But he didn't press further. I became Jiang Xiubai's bodyguard. Because I discovered that a bodyguard's wages were higher than a maid's. And I needed to repay my debts. Jiang Xiubai didn't believe I could fight. In his words, a person as small as a cat would be blown away by the wind. And even if they were to break through the sky, they would only be able to punch someone in the chest and kick them in the calf. They probably wouldn't even dare to kill a chicken. Until I pinned Jiang Xiubai to the ground, held a large knife to his neck, and told him in a very serious tone, "I'm really good at fighting. You won't regret hiring me." Jiang Xiubai lay on the ground and began to question his life. Actually, in my previous life, after being picked up by Shiji, I was discovered to have a talent for martial arts. Shiji also said that I would make a very useful weapon. If it weren't for being reunited with the palace later, I would likely have been trained as a secret guard for the Marquis's mansion. I'm not very smart. I have difficulty reading and writing, and I'm not good at needlework. But I put my heart and soul into learning martial arts. At the time, I wanted to protect Shiji, but Shiji wanted me to protect someone else. Looking at the knife in my hand, I felt a moment of confusion, but I couldn't help but think optimistically that things were actually pretty good now. At least I could choose who I wanted to protect. Jiang Xiubai got up, muttering curses under his breath. He couldn't beat me, so he could only rely on his status to intimidate me. All the food I've fed you over the years. Where did it all go? After all this time, you're still as skinny as a cat. People would think I've been abusing you. Before he could finish, Jiang Xiubai narrowed his eyes and jumped up suddenly. Then he said with great indignation, "Tell me. Are you trying to make people think I've been abusing you? Great. You look like a dumb little girl. But you're full of tricks and have so many tricks up your sleeve." I blinked and took a while to catch up with Jiang Xiubai's train of thought. So I explained to Jiang Xiubai very seriously, "No. It's because I can't gain weight. I've explained this many times. But no one believes me. But I still want to say, what if?" Jiang Xiubai was taken aback. He was used to speaking carelessly. He probably didn't expect someone to actually explain something he said offhand. Jiang Xiubai paused. His expression complicated. "You believe me?" I nodded, then shook my head. Perhaps because of the favor he had done for me in my previous life. I subconsciously didn't want Jiang Xiubai to misunderstand me. So Jiang Xiubai looked at me, scratched his head, sighed deeply, and looked a little worried. Oh no. How did I end up with such a fool? I corrected him, "I just don't like to lie." Jiang Xiubai nodded randomly, indicating he understood. But from then on, my food always had a faint bitter taste. I didn't understand medicine, but I had heard in the palace in my previous life that some prominent families would give their guards medicine to control them. I guessed Jiang Xiubai didn't trust me either. I wasn't too upset about it. Well, maybe a little bit. But I dared not feel too disappointed. Until, after some time, I noticed that my body showed no signs of abnormality. I even rarely caught a cold. I went to ask Jiang Xiubai. "You have the nerve to ask?" Jiang Xiubai initially pretended not to hear me. But after I asked him repeatedly, he couldn't help but glare at me angrily. He then looked away in disgust. My precious medicine could turn a dog into a pig. You, on the other hand, have been living off it for so long and still look as skinny as a beggar on the street. He said the last part very quietly. But I have good hearing. So I realized, oh, those medicines were meant to nourish my body. I bit my lip and told Jiang Xiubai seriously. Those medicines are a waste on me. I just wanted to find an opportunity to repay Jiang Xiubai's kindness. But it seems like I'm only accumulating more debt. I don't want to go back to that palace where people eat each other. But I don't have the money to repay these herbs. Jiang Xiubai didn't want to hear this. So he glared at me. What do you mean? A waste? When I first picked you up, you were sick all the time. Now you can fight 4 of my guards by yourself. This proves that I'm a good master. When you go back, you can tell your parents that I'm a capable young master. I didn't say a word, but I was thinking about how I could repay him. Jiang Xiubai probably guessed what I was thinking. He snorted. You wouldn't be thinking I'm a sucker, would you? I looked up at Jiang Xiubai and nodded. This young master of the Jiang family was famous throughout Yongzhou for being a sucker. For example, the cloak he bought for 1,000 taels of silver was actually made by a poor, unknown embroideress who couldn't even afford the doctor's fees. Jiang Xiubai was amused. Even when cursing your master in your heart, you can't even lie. You really are a block of wood. Though he was scolding me, his eyes were filled with laughter. Until I added, my life isn't worth much. That silver could buy many people like me. In my previous life, Shiji brought me back and had a doctor examine my body. So I know he spent a lot of silver on me. I want to live, but I can't owe others too much. When what you owe exceeds what you can repay, living becomes a luxury. Especially since Shinshiji's kindness toward me all comes with a price tag. I've already been taken advantage of. Then I saw the smile fade from Jiang Xiubai's face. After a moment, he tugged at the corner of his mouth. In a mocking tone, he whispered, "That's why I hate this world that treats human life like grass even more." This world is indeed one where human life is as worthless as grass. Massacres are everywhere, and life is the least valuable thing. I watched Jiang Xiubai in silence, feeling that there was a kindness within him that was out of place in this world. This wasn't necessarily a good thing. But it didn't matter. I would protect Jiang Xiubai no matter what. He dared not kill. So I would kill for him. Jiang Xiubai hadn't planned on waiting for my response. He thought for a moment, then suddenly smiled, "Since you're so eager to repay your debt, then help me with something." "All right." I agreed without hesitation. Jiang Xiubai returned to his usual carefree demeanor. The weight I felt just moments ago seemed like a mere illusion. Jiang Xiubai had originally come to Yongzhou to visit his maternal grandfather. He saw Shiji again on the way back to the capital. When the two groups met, I should have avoided him. But then straggling soldiers blocked the way, and black-clad assassins intercepted us. Jiang Xiubai cursed. It must be that bastard Shiji who brought them here. Jiang Xiubai firmly believed that he was well-liked by everyone, and no one in the capital or Yongzhou would dare to harm him. He told me to stay in the carriage and not move, saying that it wasn't proper for a girl to get involved in fighting. I didn't say a word, but I clenched the knife in my hand tightly. The enemy was clearly prepared. Jiang Xiubai cursed Shiji with his mouth, but then rushed to save him. A long sword was thrust toward Jiang Xiubai. Shiji, who was being protected by Jiang Xiubai, clearly saw it, but he just stood there indifferently without uttering a word to warn him. Until I stepped in front of Jiang Xiubai. The sword pierced his shoulder, but the bandit's head was also severed by me. This was the simplest and most effective method. But blood still splattered onto Jiang Xiubai's body. I heard this outfit is pretty expensive. I looked at Jiang Xiubai's suddenly darkened face and instinctively shrank my neck. Stammering. "Actually, I was trying to protect you. Who taught you to use such a method that harms yourself while hurting others to protect someone else?" Jiang Xiubai pulled me back, his tone almost gritting his teeth. He seemed to want to say something else, but was interrupted by Shinshiji's urgent voice. "Aao." Shinshiji's voice trembled as he fixed his gaze on me. There was a certain joy in his eyes, as if he had regained something he had lost. Shiji rarely showed such raw emotions in front of me. This man had the arrogance of a nobleman deep in his bones, even though he usually hid it well. To him, I was just a beggar he had saved from the dead. So Shiji had always been very stingy with his trust toward me. But now, Shiji was standing right in front of me. His eyes were red, and his voice was strained as he suppressed his emotions. "I found you." He doesn't hide his unusual state at all. The high and mighty Shinzaihui shouldn't have gone out of his way to find a beggar from the outskirts of Yongzhou City. The gentleman praised by everyone in the capital shouldn't have turned a blind eye to his savior in danger. Only Shin Taifu, who endured humiliation and became the emperor's son-in-law, and then helped the new emperor overthrow the old regime. I suddenly remembered Shinshiji's kind words to Su Yan, so I instinctively took a half step back, only to be blocked by Jiang Xiubai. Shinshiji's body stiffened for a moment. "I am. If you want to acknowledge our relationship, Wait until later. Jiang Shoubai suddenly interrupted, his expression unusually cold. He led me toward the carriage, roughly pushing aside Shiji, who was blocking the way, and casually added, "What kind of grudge do you have? Blocking the path like this? People might think the young marquis is intentionally blocking the way to punish the young lady and make her suffer more." His tone was casual and nonchalant. But when I looked at Jiang Shoubai, I saw him tightly pursing his lips, his eyes filled with a cruelty I had never seen before. For a moment, I felt as though I was seeing the invincible young general who would one day dominate the battlefield. Shiji stumbled from the impact. I didn't know which word Jiang Shoubai had said that had struck a nerve with him. His face suddenly lost all color, looking paler and weaker than I did as an injured person. He stared blankly at my back, his lips trembling slightly before he spoke in a very low voice. I didn't. But his words held no persuasive power. I couldn't help but glance at Shiji, thinking to myself that this man was a master of pretense. He clearly despised me. Yet now he was pretending to be deeply concerned about me. But why had he come to find me again? I don't owe him anything. Has he set his sights on that fair-faced youth? Jiang Shoubai suddenly spoke up. He sneered. Your taste is truly abysmal. Seeing me look at him in confusion, Jiang Shoubai grew even more irritated, rubbing his forehead before shoving me into the carriage. He growled at me. I'll settle this with you later. Before getting into the carriage, I caught a glimpse of him glancing down at his own body, then smirking with satisfaction before whispering, "That scrawny little body of his would faint from a single punch from me. I wonder what he sees in him. You're such an ignorant fool." His tone was vicious. I didn't notice Shiji at all. I whispered to myself, "All I want is to survive." Shiji said he was sent by my mother to find me. The way he acted when he saw me that day was just a mistake. He composed himself and smiled gently at me. "Aao. I'm here to take you home." I looked at Shiji and faintly recalled that in my previous life, I had been waiting for those words all along. I stayed at the Shen mansion for a year and a half before being taken into the palace. But there were simply too many princes and princesses in the palace, and I was the most inconspicuous one. The palace was a place where people were devoured, and the princess's mansion was cold and desolate. I kept thinking about when Shiji would come to take me back. But I waited for a very long time, only to have Shiji burst into my princess's mansion with a sword, his eyes bulging as he demanded, "Why did you kill Yao?" That day, I nearly died at the hands of someone who couldn't fight. I had no home, and I couldn't wait for someone to come and take me home. Jiang Shoubai didn't say a word. To be precise, since the day I was injured, Jiang Shoubai hadn't spoken a single word to me. But now, his silence suddenly made me panic. So I instinctively grabbed Jiang Shoubai's sleeve. Just like the day we first met, when I grabbed the corner of his cloak and held it tightly. I asked him blankly, "You don't want me anymore?" The words came out, but they felt wrong. So I licked my dry lips and hurriedly added, "I still owe you the silver. And there are those herbs. And the thing you asked me to do earlier. I haven't finished it yet." My voice grew softer and softer, and I suddenly realized something. Although I said I wanted to repay Jiang Shoubai, it seemed like I had been causing him trouble all along. Jiang Shoubai stared at me blankly. After a moment, he turned his head away and muttered under his breath, then couldn't help but raise his arm to cover his eyes. "You're such a stubborn piece of wood." Jiang Shoubai spoke very softly, but I still heard him. I watched as the tips of his ears, hidden beneath his black hair, gradually turned red. He then pretended to cough casually. "She doesn't want to go with you." There was a hint of pride in his expression. I had thought Shiji would insist a little more, but he just stared intently at my hand, which was holding Jiang Shoubai's sleeve, the light in his eyes fading bit by bit. Finally, he said in a hoarse voice, "All right. This was completely unlike Shinsurgi's nature. I instinctively felt that Shinsurgi would not give up so easily. After all, he needed a reward. A reward for retrieving the imperial bloodline. Lord Shen was renowned for favoring his concubines and neglecting his wife. Although Shinsurgi was a young marquis, there were countless eyes, both open and hidden, watching him in the marquis's mansion. In his previous life, Shinsurgi had used this reward to secure his position and nearly married the woman he loved. Now that he had another chance, he would only act more skillfully. So I grew vigilant. Shinsurgi noticed the caution in my eyes. His body, which seemed unstable, swayed slightly, and his face turned pale, terrifying to behold. Finally, his usually proud and straight back was almost bent in half. He coughed heavily but forced a gentle smile toward me. As long as you're happy, that's all that matters. But his eyes were red, as if they were about to spill tears at any moment. Shinsurgi had fallen ill. Jiang Shoubai didn't want to go with him, but Shinsurgi insisted on following him even though he was ill. In the end, it was his attendant who came to ask Jiang Shoubai. Jiang Shoubai knew it was for me, so he sent someone to ask my opinion. This man was still angry with me. Even his words had to be relayed by others. I thought about it and took the opportunity to approach him during a break. I spoke honestly. I was wrong. Humph. Jiang Shoubai smiled without any warmth. It's rare for him to finally realize the mistake he made 4 days ago at around 2 p.m. I belatedly realized that he was referring to when I was injured. So I touched my shoulder, which was still throbbing, and murmured softly, "What do you want to say? I shouldn't have let myself get hurt." Then Jiang Shoubai sighed heavily. "Never mind," he muttered to himself. "Why should I get angry at a piece of wood?" Jiang Shoubai stretched lazily. He leaned against the tree, tilted his head, and smiled at me. Then he said, "But I always have a way to make this piece of wood bloom." "Wood can't bloom." I wanted to argue. But in that moment, I believed Jiang Shoubai's words. So I asked him, "Are you this kind to everyone?" During the time I'd been with Jiang Shoubai, I noticed he was different from the people of Kyoto. He seemed to get along with everyone, whether they were scholars, farmers, merchants, or even street beggars. He could strike up a conversation with them. Jiang Shoubai was taken aback by my question. He seemed to think for a moment. Then his brows relaxed. "Since you went ahead and watched it for free, why do you think I have friends all over the world? You have to give before you can receive." That's what he said. But in that moment, I felt a deep and sorrowful loneliness emanating from Jiang Shoubai. It was a loneliness that set him apart from everyone else. How strange. But he quickly changed the subject. "Would I suddenly miss home?" "Your home in Kyoto?" Jiang Shoubai paused and smiled. "Of course." But I had a vague feeling that he was lying. On the day we parted, Shinsurgi came looking for me. "Ain." He called out to me and coughed heavily. He was gravely ill. His pale face flushed with an unhealthy red. After calling my name, Shinsurgi remained silent. He just stared at me quietly. His eyes filled with a hint of anticipation that was easy to detect. Shinsurgi's body had been ruined by the filthy affairs of the home mansion. He sought someone to heal my body, so I also tried every means to remove the poison from his body. I once climbed a cliff to pick a medicinal herb for him, breaking my arm but still eagerly delivering it to him. Yet at that time, Shinsurgi blamed me for not following Suyun, which led to her being injured during that period. Later, the herb said to revive the dead and restore bones to flesh was taken by Suyun, even though she only suffered minor injuries. Shinsurgi truly loved Suyun so much. I thought to myself, then walked past Shinsurgi without changing my expression. But just as I passed by, Shinsurgi's hoarse voice rang out. It sounded like he was desperately suppressing tremors, yet also quietly awaiting some known punishment. "You're back too, aren't you?" As soon as Shinshurji finished speaking, I almost instinctively reached for the knife at my side. There was no one around. Shinshurji seemed not to notice my movement and continued speaking softly. 19 is a very kind young girl. She dares not kill. So I deliberately put myself in danger to force 19 to draw her own knife. On the night of her first killing, 19 was so scared she couldn't sleep. It was I who forced her to get used to it. 19 is very afraid of pain. When I brought her back, even the slightest injury would make her wince in agony. It was I who forced her to learn to endure the pain without uttering a single sound. 19 is very kind-hearted. If she saw me like this, she would surely find a way to cheer me up. It was I who personally shattered her such thoughts, making her hate me to the core. But all that was later. So, Yao, you're back, right? Shinshurji's breathing became rapid. He seemed to be expecting something, but deep in his eyes was a glimmer of despair. The only response to Shinshurji was the knife across his neck. I was expressionless. I just want to live. Everyone wants me dead. But I want to live. When I first reincarnated, I was constantly anxious, fearing that people would say I was a demon and burn me to death. When I learned that Shinshurji was like me, I dared not sleep even at night, afraid that I would wake up to find myself either killed by Shinshurji or forcibly taken back to that palace where people were eaten. He could easily dispose of me. Though reborn, I was still the same person from my previous life. I was timid and lacked cunning. Without entering the palace, I would have been nothing more than a lowly beggar. I knew martial arts, but Shinshurji had countless skilled guards by his side. A mosquito cannot shake a tree. I, who only wanted to survive, could not hold the knife meant for revenge. The sharp blade sliced through Shinshurji's skin, the blood red and blinding. I came to my senses and instinctively tried to pull back the knife. But Shinshurji grabbed the blade and slowly pushed it into his left shoulder. His face, already pale, turned even whiter, like that of a ghost. Was it because he found you first? Shinshurji was clearly smiling, but it looked like he was about to cry. He struggled to suppress the tremor in his voice. But I went looking for you that day too. I wanted to take Wang home. I promised her I would bring her back. But I couldn't find her. I searched for a very long time. I even killed those people. But none of them knew where my Wang was. Shinshurji seemed to be in a trance. He approached me, his hands tightly gripping the knife, blood dripping down. I released my grip on the knife expressionlessly and took a few steps back to avoid his outstretched hand. Shinshurji froze in place. After a moment, he asked me in a voice tinged with hurt but mostly confusion, "Arung, why didn't you wait for me?" The question was oddly phrased. So I looked at Shinshurji. "You were the one who told me that the thing you regretted most was saving me back then. That's why I risked my life to crawl out of that pile of dead bodies on my own." "Shinshurji, I don't owe you anything." Shinshurji opened his mouth, but after a long pause, he managed to force out the words, "I'm sorry." I shook my head. "Actually, you don't need to act like this in front of me. I wasn't dead back then. I saw Su Yan, and I heard what she said to you. She may have deceived you, but you forgave her." Shinshurji probably didn't expect me to have such an experience. His breathing grew heavier, but the light in his eyes began to flicker. Almost urgently, "What happened later?" "Did you see what happened later?" Why was there a later?" "I'm confused. Isn't this enough? You burned down my princess's mansion, became the revered minister Shen, and Su Yun is now the empress, who will compensate you in every way. This is what I saw." So the light dimmed little by little, almost to the point of death. So this was my punishment? How cruel! How cruel! Shinshurji's voice was choked with tears. Someone was calling my name in the distance. I looked at Shinshurji, who was barely standing, and thought for a moment before saying, "Actually, I wanted to kill you. But I'm even more afraid of death." I don't know if Shinshiji heard me, because this person was just lowering his head and stabbing the knife into his left shoulder, then looking up at me and smiling. "Aang is also injured, so we can be a better match." He seemed to whisper, "I love you." But I thought Shinshiji had gone mad. Jiang Shobai brought me back to the general's mansion. Actually, confessing to Shinshiji wasn't wise. But I gave up on myself and thought that if I was going to be taken back to the palace anyway, I might as well leave the reward for Jiang Shobai. Maybe it could offset some of my debts. But I waited day after day at the general's mansion. No one from the palace came. But I heard that the young marquis of the Shen family had broken off his relationship with his childhood sweetheart. I also heard that the young man she had been in love with was later accused of treason. If I could do it all over again, Shinshiji would have pushed Su Yan to her death. I heard that the Su family's young lady begged outside the marquis's mansion for a long time. But Shinshiji didn't even glance at her. When Jiang Shobai told me all this, his eyes kept drifting toward me. Then he lectured me, "Woodenhead, when you choose a man in the future, you must be more discerning. Don't just look at his appearance. Character, morality, physique, all must be carefully considered." I nodded slowly, thinking that Jiang Shobai was absolutely right. I didn't realize how shocking his words were for an ordinary woman. After all, whatever Jiang Shobai said, I believed. And it was clear that this made him very happy. Until Jiang Zhou's older sister's impatient voice suddenly rang out, "Qing Ke. You're corrupting Ah Zhou again." Qing Ke was Jiang Shoubai's childhood name. It was said that when Jiang Shoubai was born, he was as small as a sparrow and exceptionally frail, nearly losing his life on several occasions. Perhaps inspired by the folk saying that a humble name makes for an easy life, the general's wife had called him Qing Ke for years, hoping it would help him survive. When Jiang Shoubai heard his childhood name, he jumped up angrily and shouted, "I told you not to call me that anymore." Jiang Shoubai felt the name was too feminine and didn't suit his handsome, sturdy appearance. Jiang Er, his older sister, sneered, twisted his ear, and turned to me. "He's always been a smart aleck. Just listen and don't follow his bad example." I glanced at Jiang Shoubai, who was grimacing but clearly smiling beneath his teeth, and nodded. But when Jiang Ershan wasn't looking, I silently mouthed to Jiang Shoubai, "I know." So Jiang Ershan patted my head and praised me. "Ah Zhou is so good." Jiang Shoubai was overjoyed. The people of the general's mansion treated me very well. I guess that Jiang Shoubai must have said or done something. But Jiang Shoubai said no. He asked in return, "Why can't it simply be because you're good? Father said you have a natural talent for martial arts and are down to earth. A rare gem. Mother said you're obedient and well-behaved. And she can't find anyone in the mansion to talk to. But you're the only one who listens to her carefully. Since you came to the mansion, Mother has been much happier. My second sister also said that if she had a daughter, she would want her to be just like you. So, Woodenhead, why can't it be because you deserve it?" I didn't answer. But I thought to myself, if I'm really that good, then why didn't anyone like me in my previous life? No. Maybe there was one. Jiang Shoubai's eldest sister, the current Empress Jiang. She was the only one who protected me in the palace. It was she who told me, "Little Ayu, if you can escape, flee this cannibalistic imperial palace as soon as possible." But I didn't escape. And neither did Jiang Guifei. The once graceful and heroic general's daughter died in that filthy harem. She died under a trumped-up charge. The Jiang family was accused of treason, and Jiang Guifei was accused of corrupting the harem. Later, the Jiang family's charges were overturned. The emperor shed a few tears, bestowed various titles and rewards, and the matter was swept under the rug. Thinking of this, my body stiffened instantly. Those events from my previous life, which had been forgotten for some reason, resurfaced in my mind, and I felt as though I had been plunged into an ice cellar. At that moment, Jiang Xiubai was looking down at me and asking, "My elder sister cannot leave the palace. So she had some small trinkets and fabrics sent to the mansion. They have already been delivered to my courtyard. Let me take you there." "Jiang Xiubai." I suddenly grabbed Jiang Xiubai's arm, but the words stuck in my throat and I couldn't speak. I was afraid. Afraid that if I spoke those words, I would be labeled as a demon. I once saw a villager who had come back to life after dying, only to be forcibly dragged away by others and burned alive. But in reality, the so-called coming back to life was merely a misdiagnosis by the doctor. "What's wrong?" Jiang Xiubai turned his head to look at me, his gaze as calm as ever. So I suddenly fell silent. I told myself that this was Jiang Xiubai, who had done so much for me. This was the general's mansion, which had been so kind to me. So I heard myself speak, my voice hoarse. I once had a dream. I still dared not tell Jiang Xiubai that I was the one who had come back to life. I could only invent a dream and strain my brain trying to figure out what had happened that year. It all started when one of General Zhang's deputy officers defected and falsely accused the general's mansion of colluding with the enemy and betraying the country. Empress Jiang was deeply favored by the emperor, and General Jiang, who held a large army and was beloved by the people, had become a thorn in the side of the emperor. The downfall of the Jiang mansion was inevitable. This was told to me by an old nurse who was about to die. That officer was personally bound and brought there by Shiji. At the time, I had seen him from afar while trying to meet Shiji. That man had a scar on his left cheek and a large black mole on his chin. His surname was Zhang. I tried to describe that so-called dream in greater detail. There was also a maid named Lianxin by Jiang Guifei's side. She wasn't a good person. She was the empress's confidant and later falsely accused Jiang Guifei of adultery. Before I could finish, I suddenly stopped. I felt like I had said too much, and it didn't sound like a dream anymore. So I bit my lip and cautiously glanced up at Jiang Xiubai, even though it was just a dream. I feel like it's about to happen." My voice trembled slightly. I didn't know if Jiang Xiubai would believe me. So I started to think wildly, if Jiang Xiubai didn't believe me, how would I resolve this future crisis? I knew the answer. But Jiang Xiubai hummed in acknowledgement, then raised his hand and stroked my head. "I will investigate these people. You stay at the mansion and wait for my news." This time it was my turn to be startled. You believe me?" "Of course I believe you." Jiang Xiubai suddenly smiled and sighed as if joking. "If I didn't believe you, how hard would it be for you?" Those few words made my eyes suddenly redden. For a moment, I thought how wonderful it would have been if I had met Jiang Xiubai in my previous life. He would believe me, and I wouldn't have ended up like this. "Why are you crying?" Jiang Xiubai suddenly became flustered. He frantically searched for a handkerchief. Stammering an explanation, I was just saying that. "If you don't like it, I won't say it anymore." His voice grew softer and softer. Finally, Jiang Xiubai shut his mouth, pulled out a snack bag he had been carrying, and asked me cautiously, "Want some?" I didn't know when Jiang Xiubai had started carrying around some sweet snacks. He said that the bodyguards following him were skinny and small, and even he, as their master, was looked down upon because of them. I nodded, but my eyes were still red. For a moment, I couldn't tell if it was because I was afraid of being discovered or because of what Jiang Xiubai had said. But Jiang Xiubai sighed in relief. He lay on the recliner, his hands behind his head, quietly watching the sky. Even after I finished eating, he remained in the same position. He called me, turning his head to look at me with a smile in his eyes. "I actually really want to go home. You're already at the general's mansion. This isn't your home. Jiang Shubai smiled and pointed to the sky. My home is very far away. Perhaps I'll never be able to return in this lifetime. I was taken aback and blurted out. Could you be an immortal? Jiang Shubai was amused by my words and laughed so hard he held his stomach. Well, that's not entirely wrong. He tilted his head. After all, the people where we come from can fly to the heavens and dive into the seas. To you, we are indeed like immortals. We are the same. Jiang Shubai stood up. He seemed to want to pinch my cheek, but then remembered something and curled his fingers. In the end, he simply leaned down and gently touched my face with the cool back of his hand as a comforting gesture. He looked at me seriously and whispered softly. So, little cat. Don't be afraid. Jiang Shubai always called me a little cat. A weak and timid cat. But actually extremely spoiled. And made of wood. Jiang Shubai disappeared for a while. When he returned, I heard that a deputy officer in the military camp had been beheaded. He was accused of treason and colluding with the enemy, with irrefutable evidence. Things were complicated on my eldest sister's side. After all, she was connected to the Empress. Jiang Shubai pinched the bridge of his nose and comforted me. But don't worry. I'll keep an eye on things there as well. I felt reassured. Wooden One, you saved us. Jiang Shubai smiled, his eyes sparkling. Seeing this, I felt a rare blush rise to my cheeks. Later, he became busy again and didn't want to take me with him. So Jiang Erxi took me out of the mansion to play. Then I saw Su Yan. This was the first time I had seen her since I was reborn. The memories of the new empress, who had been pampered and elegant, gradually faded away. The Su Yan I saw now was filled with a gloomy aura. When she saw me, her gaze was cold and unsettling. But this time, I didn't return with Shiji, so Su Yan shouldn't have recognized me. For some reason, I suddenly felt a pang of anxiety. Then Su Yan suddenly smiled. She stood there, silently mouthing the words. So it's you. That night, I had a dream. To be precise, it shouldn't have been just a dream. I saw Shiji return to the pile of corpses, frantically searching for my body. He searched for a long time, his hands covered in blood, yet he never stopped. Until Su Yan came to find him and asked what he was looking for. Shiji remained silent for a long time. The young Grand Tutor, tall and elegant, had mud-stained sleeves, and blood trickled slowly from his palms. Nothing, he said after a while, his voice low. I think I accidentally lost something. If it's lost, it's lost. Su Yan sighed in relief upon hearing this. She wanted to pull Shiji, but the smell on his body deterred her, so she could only smile sweetly and say, whatever Micro Ji wants, Ah Yan will find it for you. Shiji agreed, but I clearly saw the surging yet suppressed hatred in his eyes. Who was he hating? Later, I found out that Shiji hated Su Yan, but he hated himself even more. He had schemed against Su Yan step by step, turning her from a high-ranking empress into a prostitute for everyone to ride. Then, when Su Yan was waiting for him to appear with high hopes, he cruelly plunged her back into despair. He cut off Su Yan's hands and feet and locked her in a dark dungeon. That was what Shiji had done to me. And now it was happening to Su Yan. At first, Su Yan begged him, saying that she had her reasons. But later she cursed him crazily. She mocked Shiji, are you avenging her now? But Shiji, even if I schemed against you back then, doesn't that make you wrong too? It was you who followed the Dog Emperor's orders to find her and send her to the palace. It was you who made her the Dog Emperor's concubine to secure your position in the Marquis's mansion. Shiji, I merely handed you a knife. But it was you who killed her. Now you dare to say you loved her? Even a fool would find that repulsive. I listened quietly, then suddenly understood. So Shinshirji had always known my true identity. No wonder he asked me back then. Aya will also help me like this in the future. Right? Shinshirji remained silent. Only when he heard the word disgusting did his face suddenly turn pale. Ayong wouldn't find it disgusting. He spoke softly, unsure if he was speaking to himself or to her. She doesn't know anything, and I won't let her find out. But she's already dead. Su Yan screamed. You killed her with your own hands. You even left her body unburied. Yes. Shinshirji suddenly laughed. He lowered his head and spoke very softly, so I won't spare myself either. Shinshirji had gone mad. I suddenly remembered the words Shinshirji had been interrupted by me that day. Realizing it too late. Oh. So he wanted me to see this. Jiang Shoubai had returned. It had only been a short time since we last saw each other. But it felt like ages. I had been following him closely. And finally, Jiang Shoubai teased me. You must have fallen for me. Right? I didn't respond. Just quietly watched Jiang Shoubai. As he gradually suppressed the smile on his face, a flush of red suddenly appeared on his suntanned cheeks. He scratched his hair and stammered. You really like me, don't you? Before I could answer, he started talking to himself again. Actually, it's normal for you to like me. After all, I'm good-looking, have a good personality, and am trustworthy. Even a piece of wood could fall for me. By the end of his sentence, Jiang Shoubai's tone carried a hint of self-satisfaction. If it weren't for his face growing even redder. But I don't know what it means to like someone. So I asked Jiang Shoubai, what does it mean to like someone? Shinshirji said he was infatuated with me. Once was after I died. Once was after I was reborn. But he killed me. His infatuation with me only makes me feel worse. Jiang Shoubai sensed something was off and immediately grew wary. Did someone say that to you? I didn't want to lie to Jiang Shoubai. So I nodded. Which little brat dared to steal my girl while I was away? Jiang Shoubai was so angry he rolled up his sleeves and cursed, I'll catch him and hang him on the city wall for 3 or 4 days. His expression was quite comical, dispelling all the negative emotions I had felt earlier because of that dream. So I couldn't help but curve my eyes. Do you think he likes you? Jiang Shoubai followed up with a smile. What do I think? I thought carefully and shook my head. He almost killed me. Yet he told me he was wrong and that he actually has feelings for me. That can't be love. Jiang Shoubai blurted out almost without thinking. Perhaps afraid I didn't understand. He added, Chongqing really likes you. That brat usually doesn't bother with anyone. But he goes out of his way to flatter you and act cute. Thinking that's how you'll like him more. Chongqing is the son of Zhang's second eldest sister. Jiang Shoubai snorted coldly but couldn't help but laugh. The other day, my second brother-in-law brought back some pastries from the Lotus Pavilion for him and my second sister. He thought the pastries were delicious. So he secretly hid a piece, waiting to give it to you. I recalled the day Chongqing brought me the pastries, and how he cried so pitifully when he carefully unwrapped the handkerchief and found the pastries crushed. I couldn't help but smile. Look. Even children know that if you like someone, you should save the best pastries for them and find ways to please the person you like. There is no such thing in this world as hurting the person you love because of a misunderstanding or ignorance. If you are hurt even a little, then it is not true love. Jiang Shoubai propped himself up on his knees and looked straight at me. His eyebrows curved. Little wood. Remember this, if you don't even feel that affection yourself, then it's not love. I looked at the tiny reflection of myself in Jiang Shoubai's light-colored eyes. I saw the familiar face. And without realizing it, I couldn't help but smile with a lightness I'd never felt before. So I awkwardly avoided his gaze and, after a moment, whispered to Jiang Shoubai, I don't have a name. Like Jiang Shoubai, I nearly died as a child. But I wasn't as fortunate as he was. Because I was born on the 19th day of the 12th lunar month. My mother casually named me 19. She didn't even give me a proper name. She believed I wouldn't live long. So there was no point in giving me a name. Later, I entered the palace. I was merely a girl brought in to serve as medicine for the emperor. So there was no need to waste time on a name. Thus, I came to be called Shiji. From beginning to end, I have never had a name of my own. Jiang Xiubai froze, seemingly unable to process why I was telling him this. Until I cautiously asked him again, so, Jiang Xiubai, can you help me choose a name? He opened his mouth. I continued on my own, actually. I think the surname Jiang sounds nice. I looked at Jiang Xiubai, my tone carrying a hint of hope I hadn't even noticed myself. Can you? Jiang Xiubai took a deep breath. He straightened up and teased. Are you sure? If you take my surname, you'll be mine. He seemed to have returned to his previous carefree demeanor, but his voice trembled slightly. I was confused. Aren't I your bodyguard? Doesn't that mean I'm his person? He really is a block of wood. Jiang Xiubai's breathing halted for a moment before he muttered a low curse. Then he patted my head and coaxed. All right. I'll take this task. But naming someone is a big matter. I need to discuss it with my father, mother, and older sister. After all, we'll be family from now on. Family? My eyes lit up, and I smiled, biting my lip. I had a home, and I had finally been taken home. But I still hadn't received the name Jiang Xiubai had chosen for me. An imperial edict arrived at the general's mansion, and I was taken to the palace. The emperor shed a few tears, holding my hand and pretending to be heartbroken over the hardships I had endured over the years. Everything seemed to have returned to my previous life. But clearly, I had tried so hard to avoid it. I was trapped in the palace and began drinking those bitter medicines. The emperor was obsessed with immortality. He feared death. So he needed a guinea pig. The sorcerer said the conditions were stringent, and the guinea pig had to be of his bloodline. Among all the princes and princesses in the palace, I was the only one who fit the criteria. So I was named Shiji. But clearly, I was so close to having my own name. Empress Jiang came to see me. She bore a striking resemblance to Jiang Xiubai, especially in how she fed me. All the flesh my family had managed to nurture was ruined by that bastard. Empress Jiang pinched my face, gritted her teeth for a moment, then softened and coaxed me, eat one more piece. Look how skinny you've become. She didn't know about the test subject matter, she just thought I couldn't adjust to palace life. She comforted me further, once your princess's mansion is settled, I'll send Qing Ke to keep you company. Perhaps fearing trouble, the emperor ordered someone to watch me closely, and even Jiang Guifei could only visit me occasionally. So I smiled at Jiang Guifei and nodded, all right. Just wait a little longer. I told myself. Once I'm out of the palace, everything will be fine. I went through this in my previous life, I just need to endure it a little longer. As I thought this, I couldn't help but find the medicine bitter and hard to swallow. I should have been used to it by now. But I remembered the medicine hidden in my food. I remembered the bag of candied fruits that Jiang Xiubai always carried with him. I realized that I still loved Jiang Xiubai. I loved him very much. I counted the days until I could leave the palace. But as the days passed, the emperor showed no signs of letting me go to the princess's mansion. Empress Jiang was also confined to the Shuijiang Hall and could not leave. The amount of medicine delivered each day grew increasingly larger. The emperor seemed to grow more impatient by the day. This sudden change unsettled me. It wasn't until a new concubine named Su Guiran arrived in the harem, favored by the emperor, that I realized the source of my unease. It was Su Yuan. Only then did I belatedly realize that Su Yuan must have known my true identity. After all, she had once been the person Shiji trusted most. When Su Yan came to see me that day, I had just been forced to drink 2 bowls of medicine and was in excruciating pain. How pitiful. She looked at me with a hint of pity in her eyes that I couldn't understand. Shinshiji hasn't come to find you. And the young master from the general's mansion can't come in either. You see, men are unreliable. People have to rely on themselves. I didn't really want to deal with Su Yan, but I had to admit that her last words were spot on. So I smashed the bowl and thrust the shards into Su Yan's chest. I did have to rely on myself. I whispered. So this grudge. I must avenge it myself. But the medicine was harmful to the body. So I used all my strength. But I only managed to give Su Yan superficial wounds and make her bleed a little. You mad woman! She screamed in pain. The palace attendants hurriedly pulled me away. I tilted my head to look at Su Yan. Her hair disheveled and her appearance disheveled. No longer the arrogant figure she had been earlier. And suddenly I laughed. I thought to myself. It was indeed because of Jiang Xiubai. I've become much bolder now. This is good. The palace was in chaos. The emperor suddenly fell seriously ill. And the position of crown prince had been vacant for a long time. Several princes were openly and secretly vying for the position. This was something that had never happened in my previous life. Soon after, the third prince forced the emperor to abdicate. On the day of the palace coup, Shiji found me. It was the first time I had seen him since I arrived in the capital. The once upright and proper young marquis now exuded a cold, murderous intent. Yet when he saw me, his expression suddenly softened into the gentle smile I was familiar with. He reached out his hand to me. Cautiously. Let me take you away. I sat there, quietly watching Shiji. I watched his fingers twitch. Then he called out my name. In a nervous voice. This place isn't safe, Shiji said in a hoarse voice, his eyes red and swollen. I'll take you away first. Once this is over, I'll send you back. He paused. Then spoke each word with great difficulty. You can go wherever you want. But I don't want to go with you. I shook my head and said. Jiang Xiubai said he would take me home. I believe him. So I'll wait for him. But it was clearly me who found you first. Shiji took a few steps forward. His voice choked with emotion. People make mistakes. You can't deny me even the chance to make it up to you. How cruel would that be to me? So I thought. What Jiang Xiubai said earlier was indeed reasonable. He wouldn't hurt me because of his mistake. But if Jiang Xiubai couldn't find me, how cruel that would be for him. Shiji's body suddenly stiffened. I smiled at him again. Don't call me Aao anymore. I'm not called Shiyang. I have my own name now. Name? Shiji asked softly. Yes. My name is. I stopped mid-sentence. I realized with frustration that before I entered the palace, Jiang Xiubai hadn't told me his name yet. But the next second, a voice filled with laughter took over. Sun Nuan. Her name was Jiang Sun Nuan. Jiang Xiubai had indeed come to fetch me. I was just going to fetch the antidote. But you beat me to it. Jiang Xiubai raised an eyebrow and tilted his chin toward me. What are you standing there for? Hurry up and come over. So I nearly skipped toward him. But Shiji pulled me back. I instinctively tried to pull my hand away. But Shiji held it tightly. Ain. He stubbornly called me by that name. Staring at me without blinking. Don't you want me either? His voice was filled with pleading. He also had wounds on his body. Severe enough to penetrate the bone. I should hate Shiji. But at that moment, I felt he was pitiful. So I thought for a moment and said, I heard you say you love me. Shiji stiffened, and his grip on my hand loosened slightly. I added, but someone else told me that if even I can't feel that love, then it's not real. You saved me, even if you did it for your own reasons. But you let me live and taught me martial arts. At least during that time. I was happy. But Shiji, I still want to kill you. But you can't kill him, after all. He's now the second prince's right-hand man. The third prince staged a coup. And the second prince saved the emperor. A grand drama. Jiang Xiubai walked over with a smile, gripping Shinshiji's hand tightly and forcing him to let go. I heard the sound of bones breaking. Shinshiji groaned softly. Then his arm dropped limply. I sighed regretfully, never mind. I'm about to die. At that moment, Shinshiji calmed down. He looked deeply into my eyes. Then suddenly smiled, I won't dirty your hands. I felt confused again. Why is he going to die again? He took an arrow meant for the second prince. The arrowhead was poisoned. And there was no antidote. Jiang Xiubai squeezed my hand and looked down at me, though I really don't want to say it. I must tell you, he traded his life to beg for your lifelong peace and happiness before the second prince. I thought you wouldn't say that. Shinshiji tugged at the corner of his mouth. Jiang Xiubai sneered. His eyes challenging, I'm different from you. This time, Shinshiji fell silent. But I won't thank you. I turned to look at Shinshiji and whispered, although you saved me, you also killed me. I'm afraid of pain. But you've been making me suffer all along. That's fine. Shinshiji coughed heavily. His sleeve covered in splotches of blood. He stared at me blankly and smiled, this is good. I averted my gaze, tugged at Jiang Xiubai's sleeve, and tried to walk out. I asked him again. What was the antidote you mentioned earlier? You're such a blockhead. Jiang Xiubai scolded me, then handed me a porcelain bottle. You've been experimented on for so long, you must have ingested countless toxins. You need the antidote. Here. Take it. I nodded. Contrary to my expectations, the antidote wasn't bitter at all, it was sweet. Like a sugar pill. It was the sweetest thing I had tasted in a long time. So I couldn't help but take another bite. Is there more? I turned to ask Jiang Xiubai. But all I saw was red. I looked down in shock and realized that there were dark red bloodstains on the porcelain bottle. The bloodstains were similar in color to the bottle, so I hadn't noticed them at first. How could I be so greedy? The wooden cat has turned into a little glutton? Jiang Xiubai was still smiling, but blood kept flowing from his mouth and nose. I stood there, a chill suddenly running through my body. Jiang Xiubai. I asked him in a trembling voice, my vision gradually blurring. I asked him, why are you bleeding? Jiang Xiubai said it was because of the hot and dry weather. He roughly wiped the blood off his face and reassured me. It's nothing. I'll go back and eat something to clear the heat and detoxify my body. The sorcerer didn't have an antidote. Shinshiji came out of the hall. He glanced at Jiang Xiubai and lowered his eyes. He just tested it on himself bit by bit and then remade the antidote for you. If you don't speak, no one will think you're mute. Jiang Xiubai rolled his eyes, then softened his tone as he looked down at me. Don't cry. I'm not going to die. Besides, I've made the antidote once, I can make it again. He tried to wipe away my tears, but upon seeing his own blood-stained hand, he reluctantly withdrew it. Finally, he fumbled around, trying to comfort me. Stop crying. You're breaking my heart. But this time, Shinshiji only gave Jiang Xiubai a complicated look and didn't say a word. You're lying. My whole body was trembling, and I dug my nails into my palms to gather the strength to continue. If you can mix it again. Why didn't you take it first? Jiang Xiubai was speechless. After a moment, he sighed helplessly and smiled. You're usually so dull. How come you're so sharp today? Enough. I tried to speak, but he interrupted me. Jiang Xiubai took my hand and led me forward. I'll walk you out first. Don't worry. Evil deeds last 1,000 years. I won't die so easily. Besides, I've lived this long, I'm already tired of it. The last sentence, Jiang Xiubai said very softly. But Jiang Xiubai had deceived me. He had been wounded by an arrow. To prepare the antidote for me as quickly as possible, Jiang Shoubai had even increased the dosage. Now, the arrow wound and the poison were taking effect. As we approached the palace gates, a large group of guards rushed forward. Their numbers far exceeded those Jiang Shoubai had brought. They were the third prince's men. I don't know who betrayed us, but it doesn't matter now. They surrounded us, waiting for a single command. Though I was unwilling, I might have to break my promise. Jiang Shoubai gasped for breath, but his face still bore a smile. At least we're almost there. You just need to take that final step alone. I couldn't speak, only wiping the blood off his body over and over again. It's okay. Jiang Shoubai grabbed my hand, smiling. Such a pretty little girl is getting all dirty. Speaking had become extremely difficult for him now. Jiang Shoubai pushed me outward and coaxed. You go first. I'll come find you later. But this time, I didn't believe Jiang Shoubai's words. He probably noticed something too, and sighed heavily. All right. It's not like I did anything special for you before. Those 1,000 taels of silver were well spent. Even at this moment, he still had the heart to joke. They say the soul returns to its homeland. I can go home now. Aren't you happy for me? I knew what Jiang Shoubai meant by going home, so I remained silent and tried to pull him up again. Stay and talk to me. Jiang Shoubai grabbed my hand, looking at me with pleading eyes. A hint of petulance in his voice. We haven't seen each other in so long. Since no one's around now, let's talk properly. There were so many people around, yet he insisted there was no one. My nose grew sore, and my voice choked up. What do you want to hear? Jiang Shoubai's eyes lit up, and his expression brightened. Anything. For example, have you been bullied by anyone? If you've been bullied, tell me, and I'll avenge you. Or, has my older sister said anything to you? She's such a bad person, always exposing my shortcomings. Someone rushed forward first. Jiang Shoubai wouldn't kill anyone, but now his knife was soaked in blood. He kept talking, but as he spoke, his voice grew fainter and fainter. So, taking advantage of his breath, I quickly picked Jiang Shoubai up and tied us together tightly. What a rude little girl. Jiang Shoubai could no longer hold the knife. He closed his eyes and smiled, murmuring softly, but who can blame me for liking only you? Jiang Shoubai. I was afraid he would fall asleep, so I looked for something to say. What do you really want to hear from me? If I weren't killing someone, this might have been a good opportunity. What do you want to hear? Jiang Shoubai gathered his strength. So he leaned close to my ear and whispered very softly, I want to know if Anwan really likes me. I killed someone who tried to rush forward and hurt Jiang Shoubai. But I didn't answer his question. Jiang Shoubai. I've done what you asked me to do. Long ago, Jiang Shoubai asked me to do something for him. Then tell me, what's the reason you're fighting so hard to stay alive? All right. I've been searching for that reason. Now I've found it. So I said, one word at a time. I want to walk from south to north and see everything. Long before that, Empress Jiang had mentioned that she had a mischievous younger brother. That brat couldn't sit still for a moment, always wanting to go out, and kept talking about walking from south to north and seeing everything. Jiang Guifei said it with disdain, but her eyes were filled with laughter. She said she had heard many of her experiences from her brother. So I remembered it. But I'm cowardly. So I need someone to accompany me. And I'm spoiled. So the person who accompanies me must be Jiang Shoubai. It can only be Jiang Shoubai. Jiang Shoubai. I'm afraid of dying. But I'm even more afraid that you'll die first. Jiang Shoubai paused, then chuckled softly. That sounds nice, it's the answer I like. But you're wrong about one thing. Neither of us will die. I murmured a soft HM. The knife in my hand was already dull. So I switched to another one. Wave after wave of people charged forward. Then fell one after another. I didn't know how many I had killed. I just kept carrying Jiang Shoubai on my back, slowly making my way toward the palace gates. Jiang Shoubai said he had always been a kite drifting outside this world. It was I who had shown him the direction of the string. His words were too mysterious for me to understand. But I knew I owed Jiang Shoubai a lot of silver as his bodyguard. I had to take him home. The sky was growing lighter. I faintly heard what sounded like reinforcements arriving, and someone anxiously asking how I was doing. But my vision was obscured by a sea of blood, and I couldn't see clearly, until something hard poked my face. I instinctively turned my head to look. This time I saw clearly. It was a flower blooming in the blood. A flower carved from wood. Wood had bloomed. Jiang Shoubai's voice was so low it was barely audible. Yet it still carried a hint of a smile. Unwan. We're going home. Jiang Shoubai was taken away by his master. He was a wandering Taoist priest. And it was said that he had also secured Jiang Shoubai's soul when he was a child. When he saw me, the Taoist priest suddenly burst into laughter. I wondered why that boy's soul was so restless. It turns out he went to find you. This act of defying heaven and earth has indeed allowed him to find a way to succeed. How rare! How rare! I understood the Taoist's words and had a bold guess in my heart. But I wanted to hear it from Jiang Shoubai's own mouth. When will I see him again? Why do you want to see him? The old Taoist asked with a smile. This time I answered decisively, I am in love with him. What if it's for a lifetime? Then I will wait for him for a lifetime. The old Taoist laughed even louder. Then wait. The old Taoist led Jiang Shoubai away. And I didn't know where they went. The Jiang family comforted me, saying that he had just gone out to play for a while. So I waited through the seasons. By the time I became a member of the Jiang family, I had also become Jiang Shoubai's invincible female general on the battlefield. The following spring, I went to the outskirts of Yongzhou City. That place had once been a graveyard, but now it was fertile farmland. I sat there, propping my cheek, watching quietly, but was splashed with mud by a group of children playing nearby. The family apologized nervously to me. I waved my hand to signal it was nothing. But after they left, I couldn't help but furrow my brows. This was the clothing Jiang Shoubai had personally selected for me, saying it matched him perfectly when I wore it. It seems I should return early. I sighed, but froze in my tracks as I turned around. A familiar voice rang out, tinged with a smile. Where did this dirty little cat come from? You look rather pitiful. Blocking others' path isn't good manners. Why not come home with me instead?